Hey, it's Huck. I apologize for not posting anything here recently. As many of you know, I took a trip out of the country, and, well, things didn't go as planned. I have been posting videos of my trip to merry old England on my main channel. My main channel being HuckFin22. And I've gotten 2 videos up so far, and I have been delayed now several weeks from putting up parts 3 and part 4, the final one. And I do hope to get those up maybe by the end of the week or over the weekend. Something really tragic has happened over the last, last week. My neighbor, my next door neighbor, whose wife I have known since she was born. My neighbor, Ed, passed away a week ago, and it was totally unexpected. He had just come home from work. He works, like a late afternoon shift. Got home at around 2 in the morning, I guess. Stayed up and talked with his wife, my dear friend Lisa, for about an hour, and hit the hay, and never woke up. Lisa went to work in the morning. Their precious son went off to school in the morning, and one of their longtime friends and frequent babysitter showed up kind of unexpectedly. Usually she's there to be there for when their son gets home from school. And even though it wasn't absolutely necessary for her to be there that day, she did show up, and so she was the one that discovered that Ed was still in bed, and when she discovered what was going on, she called 911, and it was discovered that he had passed. Apparently, they didn't realize that he had an enlarged heart and like 90% blockage in an artery leading to the heart. And at any rate, everyone that knows Ed and knows Lisa and knows their son are just devastated by this, in shock, literally. And so that's unfortunately been occupying a lot of my thoughts. And so, heads up out there, get yourself checked. There's a lot of people running around that don't even realize what ailments they may be, walking around with. Ed, had you known him or observed him, you would have never guessed there was a problem. I mean, he was running around like a man, much younger than 52. At any rate, the news over the last few weeks as well has just been, one chaotic episode after another and tragedy after another. Republicans are still trying to dismantle our health care. Trump is, and HHS Secretary Tom Price had done a very thorough job of everything they could do from an administrative standpoint to destroy the Affordable Care Act from within. Price is out, but I don't suspect any of the administration's policies will change. Now, of course, they're going full bore on their budget after their latest attempt to appeal Obamacare. Repeal Obamacare has failed once again. Now they are going after Medicare and Medicaid. They've let the CHIP program and 9 million children's health policies lapse. So, we have to stand up once again, and it's hard. It is just very, very hard because there are so many things to get outraged about. This whole handling of, the Puerto Rican situation, where families, particularly in the interior, in the mountainous regions of inner Puerto Rico, where they're still not only without power, but without any, real food or water. And not enough aid is reaching these folks. Not enough waivers have been granted to allow some of the less fortunate of these folks, people, for instance, who are on food stamps, are not getting the waivers to be able to use those food stamps for, ready-made meals and hot food. A waiver that was granted in both Florida and the Houston area immediately after their hurricanes. The amount of dollars that have actually been designated for use by Puerto Rico, even though the devastation there is just crazy. And we're talking a population of over 3 million folks. It just doesn't compare to the amount of aid that has reached Florida and Houston. So, and then finally, of course, is this just horrific incident, shooting incident in Las Vegas. And, I have posted many videos. I was set to try to put something together again today on that, but I think everything that can be said has been said, including by me, on this subject. I am just so tired of Republicans and all of the gun fanatics and their NRA mind tricks, and just callous, nefarious arguments that they raise. And I have posted videos in the past. I suggest this is a very good time, if you haven't watched them, to look them up. I maintain that one of the problems that we're dealing with is that the opposition party, if you will, Democrats, have not been tough enough. It's not that they don't hold power and that they don't get any of their proposals enacted. It's that they're not even making the right arguments. Trying to dismantle our wayward path with gun violence in this country by piecemeal having a ban on assault weapons and have a 100% background check, frankly doesn't cut it when there's 330 or 340 million weapons, probably 10 or 15 million of them assault rifles running around this country. I mean, there is probably in excess of one weapon for every man, woman, and child in this country, if not greater. And the truth is that about 75, 76, 77% of all Americans don't even own a gun. It's a very, very small minority of gun owners who subscribe to the NRA, about 4 million folks. And even most NRA members don't agree with the NRA arguments. One of the videos that I posted has a rather thorough, I think, look at how this all changed, how gun policy in this country changed. And it changed with a decision known as the Heller decision, in a decision that was written by a 5-4 conservative vote, with a decision that was written by the late Anthony I just had his name on the tip of my tongue. You know, the fellow that died and was replaced now with Gorsuch. His name will come to me. See, this is what happens when you get old, like old Huck here. At any rate, in that Heller decision, even in that decision, which was wrong on its face, basically what the Heller decision changed from a court decision that had been rendered by the Berger Court decades before, was that Antonin Scalia, there's his name, determined that there was in the Second Amendment an inherent right for citizens to own guns. And the NRA has taken that argument to the nth degree, to the point now where, you know, you can own any gun, including assault weapons, that you can own these, you know, modification devices that can turn them basically into automatic weapons, is what we saw. Now they're trying to pass these suppression devices, which basically lower the sound volume of a gun's discharge drastically. The fact is, the Heller decision was wrong on many counts. But even in the Heller decision, Scalia, without being specific, stated that the state government still had the right to put restrictions on people's ownership of weapons. Whether that be what individuals can and cannot have weapons. Felons, for instance, cannot own weapons. To determine that, you know, some firearms were simply too dangerous. So, for instance, you can't own a bazooka. You can't own, you know, a nuclear device. Until, what was it, 2004, you couldn't own an assault rifle. But President Bush allowed that law to lapse. So what I am going to ask you to do is to check out, you know, a couple of my videos on gun violence, and more than that, contact your representative, both your congressman and your senator, Democrat or Republican, because there's some pretty damn brainless Democrats on this issue, and tell them that you demand real gun reform. In my opinion, no one should be able to own a gun, period, unless they've demonstrated competency with it, unless they've demonstrated some amount of responsibility, training with that weapon, unless they've demonstrated an ability to keep and store that weapon out of the hands of children or anyone else who shouldn't get their hands on it. And I would go further than that. I think any kind of military-style weapon, particularly these type that can be modified the way they are, people that certain types of bullets that can pierce, you know, these Kevlar vests, should be just outright banned. And, at the very least, the possession of an assault-type rifle, these AK-47 types, should be limited, I think, to being stored at, let's say, a weapon range, where only there you can access it for use at a shooting range. I think all of these concealed carry and open carry laws are a farce. But whatever rules you believe make sense to you, I urge you to call your representative today or tomorrow and make it clear that enough is enough. Personally, I believe that the problem with the Heller decision was that it completely perverts the intent of the original Second Amendment, which was to allow the possession of weapons in the hands of a trained militia. And those militias, first of all, are completely obsolete today, because the whole purpose of the militias back then were, the idea that they were afraid, our founding fathers were afraid of, a standing army. They had looked around and they believed that one of the great dangers to a republic, any republic, would be, a military coup. So they were against the idea of any, standing army. So that's why they wanted the ability to call up a militia. And there was some debate over that. The original version of the Second Amendment was basically a federalized militia until Nathan Hale, give me liberty or give me death guy, who also was one of the most prominent slaveholders in the South, got up and complained bitterly that in the South, what they feared were uprisings of slaves, and they wanted the Second Amendment changed to state militias, and so the amendment was changed. But the point is, the Second Amendment is obsolete. It is completely outdated. First of all, we have no slaves anymore. So Nathan Hale's argument, is out the window. And two, we've had a standing army for decades. So you can throw that argument out the window. And three, if you don't need to have a Second Amendment to assure that we're going to have the ability to call up a militia from time to time, rather than a standing army, then apparently we don't need one at all. At any rate, prior to the Heller decision, there were laws on the books in many cities across the country that banned handguns. Washington, D.C., Chicago are two examples. And Heller basically threw that out, and now you can't ban handguns for citizens in any city. At any rate, like I say, I have a video that goes into much greater detail on all of this, but for now, I think it is important that we realize that the life and liberty of all of us, is far too important to allow madmen to run around in as little as, 15 minutes or less to mow down, as many as 600 people with a cache of weapons. This is the kind of carnage that our founding fathers could have never imagined. Certainly not coming from one man in so short a period of time, from 300 yards away, 1,200 feet away, is just insane. And yet that's the world we live in. And so our laws need to change drastically. And anybody that tells you that these laws don't work, all I can do is tell you that they do when they are imposed nationally. And Australia, I think, is a very good example of that. Hawaii is another good example of that. As long as you can't bring the weapons in from a neighboring state where the laws aren't so strict, the states that have more restrictive gun policies tend to have less gun violence. It's as simple as that. The more guns, the more gun violence. It's true. And we need to do something about it, and we can't let up about that. So like I say, it's hard with so many things going on and so many things to cause us such outrage, that it's easy to throw up your hands and say, what next? I can't keep up with it all. But we've got to keep up. We've got to keep it up. So I urge you to contact your representatives, on this incredulous tax bill that Republicans are going to try to make very deep cuts, $1.5 trillion worth of cuts to Medicare and Medicaid with their budget. And that's aside from all of the other crazy, tax cuts that they're proposing to the top, 1%. But like I say, I strongly urge you to take the time to contact your representatives and let them know your level of outrage on each of these issues, on Puerto Rico, on the tax proposal, on the gun issue. Because only when we stand up do they ever back down. Like I said, I hope by this weekend I'll at least get one video up on my Huck Finn 22 channel. And I have two that I want to post about my trip to England. And with all of this going on, plus my neighbor situation, it has just been it's been a tough week. And I'll try to get things back on track. Maybe towards the end of the week, this weekend, get one of those videos up at least. Anyway, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon.